This is CBC Here and Now.
8 women are preparing to sue over allegations that police sexually assaulted them.
It's harmful for women who've been sexually assaulted to have their names made public.
Coming up, we'll hear from their lawyer, who's fighting to keep their names out of the public eye.
We're seeing our cases drop now. I think we'll continue to see that over the next few weeks.
COVID cases in the province are in decline.
So why is Dr. Fitzgerald worried about a double whammy that could hit communities this fall? We'll find out.
In just over a month, there will be a cruise ship anchored right here. What the actual economic impact of the industry is, that's just ahead.
Good evening, welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Peter Cowan. We begin with a story about allegations against RNC officers and protecting the privacy of the women who made them.
8 women are preparing to sue over allegations police officers sexually assaulted them. Now their lawyer says the government refuses to change a law that could prevent further harm. CBC's Malone Mullen reports, and a warning, the details in this story will be disturbing to some.
This is George Street in downtown St. John's. For many, it's where a night on the town begins and ends, with its stretch of bars and nightclubs. But for at least 8 women, what happened here at the end of a night out devolved into a nightmare. Lynn Moore is a sex abuse litigator representing these 8 women. They were among those who came to her last year, alleging Royal Newfoundland Constabulary officers abused them, picking them up from George Street in their patrol cars and forcing them to commit sexual acts.
They generally tend to be professional women who were enjoying a night downtown, leaving while under the influence of alcohol and offered a ride home by a police officer who then sexually assaulted them. These women did not consent. The vast majority of them were raped, and the effects on them have been devastating and long-lasting.
Moore says the women are preparing to sue government, but first they have to sit down with an expert to recount their allegations in order to keep their names and faces from the public eye. It's called a Jane Doe order, and Moore believes it should be granted automatically.
Will anyone find out? Will people know who I am? That's a very big concern for people. Even though they were wronged, there's still a degree of shame that goes with sexual assault. People tend to blame themselves. And social media can be so ugly and horrible to people that the idea of having their names out there is unbearable for these women.
Moore wants to do away with the assessment altogether. Victims of so-called revenge porn already have their identities protected without it. So do those involved in a criminal case. That's because going public, she says, takes a major toll on victims.
I watch it. I watch those women tell me the story. I watch the color rise. I watch them weep. They have nightmares before they talk about it. They have nightmares after they talk about it. Having to talk about it is re-traumatizing. And, the government knows this. How can they not?
The complainants in this case are prepared to undergo that assessment, but Moore worries how many other possible survivors are out there, afraid to come forward.
Most of the women don't know the officers. They had never met them before. And I have to wonder how many more there are. I look at these women and I see strong professional women, and I wonder what's happened to the sex workers, what's happened to the criminalized women, the marginalized people.
Moore says some of these allegations stretch back to the 1980s. One is as recent as 2017, but it's still not clear how many officers are involved or how long the court case will take. Malone Mullen, CBC News, St. John's.
The local head of Planned Parenthood says Newfoundland and Labrador has a long way to go in improving access to reproductive health care. Nikki Baldwin is speaking out in the wake of what's happening in the United States. On Monday, a leaked Supreme Court document suggested the top court could overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling, which legalized abortion in the States. Baldwin says the situation is better in Canada, but not as good as it should be. She says women seeking abortion care in this province still have few options.
We have one abortion clinic. They're amazing, wonderful people. They're in St. John's. They do travel once a month to Central and once a month to the West Coast. Outside of that, there is no abortion care in Newfoundland and Labrador, which means that Labrador, you have to fly into the island portion to get any abortion care.
Now, Baldwin says abortion pills are an option, but finding a doctor or pharmacy in rural parts of the province that carry those pills is not always common. Nikki Baldwin says there are many other hurdles that stand in the way. More of that conversation ahead on Here and Now.
It's much more of a gray day today across the province. We do have a couple of systems in play right now. First of all, cold front that's moving through that is bringing some cooler temperatures, but lots of showers out ahead of that. And we're starting to see those in eastern Newfoundland right now as well. If we zoom out, you can see that cold front is where all that cold air is in behind it. And that will be the story as we head through the next couple of days anyway, as some of that colder air starts to sink south. Some of the precipitation that we're going to expect could be in the form of some snow for parts of the island. It should not amount to much, and what does fall should be gone even by Saturday, because these temperatures that we're seeing, 12 to 16 degrees, are headed this way. Certainly as we head into next week, even more than that, and I will certainly talk about that when I come back.
Well, to some other news now. There's more hope this week. The insolvent fluorspar mine in St. Lawrence will be reactivated this year, along with its large workforce. Canada Fluorspar Incorporated closed the mine in February when it ran out of cash. Nearly all of the 280 workers were laid off. And since then, a court-supervised process has been underway to try to find new investors or possibly owners. CBC News has learned multiple letters of intent were submitted to the insolvency monitor, Grant Thornton, last month. However, we don't know how many or what companies have shown an interest so far. We're also told some of those have moved on to the next phase, which is to have formal bids ready by June 12th to get the mine back up and running again. The mayor of St. Lawrence is encouraged by these developments and says some of those prospective buyers have asked to meet with the town's leaders.
I'm sure they're coming with what they want when they come into town, but then seeing what we can do for them, and we want to know what they can do for us as well. The cost of the product on the markets today is as high as it's ever been. And we know that the uses of fluorspar now are even more widespread than they have been in the past with the production of electric cars and moving towards that area. So I mean, the use of fluorspar is more widespread. So I cannot see down the road why a company wouldn't look at this town and look at this mine as a world-class facility, like a world-class product.
And there was yet another encouraging sign this week. A buyer purchased a stockpile of fluorspar that was mined before the closure happened and was being transported to an awaiting ship in Marystown. Hope for a restart of the mine is being driven by the fact that fluorspar markets are on the upswing and St. Lawrence boasts a world-class deposit. But if a deal can't be reached by early July, bankruptcy is still looming in the background.
Health officials now say about 1/3 to half of the population has had COVID in Newfoundland and Labrador. But there's good news. The number of people in hospital testing positive and dying from the virus has been falling. Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says because so many people have been infected, they now have some protection, and that's slowing the spread of the virus.
What we're seeing is that reduction because of immunity. But also, I think people are getting outside, and so there's less time being spent indoors, and that's making a difference as well. And I think we had our biggest, rate of cases in the schools that happened probably, in the last, started about a month ago, and so that's starting to wane now as well.
Now, if you've had COVID, does that mean you don't need to take precautions? Hear her full advice as well as a warning about this fall. That's coming up in our conversation a little later on Here and Now. Well, in a little more than a month, the city of St. John's will be welcoming its first cruise ship back into the harbour, and many more will follow after that. But as Here Now's Enrica Wilhelm reports, COVID could still keep passengers from coming ashore.
The return of cruise ships on June 12th is about time for some business owners.
We're looking forward to this season This year there's, I believe, about 30 cruise ships scheduled to arrive. It seems every day we're getting reservations coming in.
Excitement that is shared by the city, which says the industry brings $10 million into the province every year.
We need the cruise industry to come back to help with the failing and the ailing hospitality industry. The economic impact, to cut it down dollar for dollar, that would be difficult to do. But you can see it from that many people into your province and into your city would have an economic impact.
But one cruise industry expert questions the industry's impact.
There is a modest benefit, but it's nowhere near what the cruise line claims it to be. Based on research we've done, my guess is that maybe there's an average spending of about $40 to $50 per passenger on a good day.
For Quinlan, every cruise ship passenger counts.
Last year, maybe 15% of revenue came from the tour side, which, was okay, but is not a whole lot. But this year, we're expecting to go back to at least pre-pandemic sales and probably even surpass that.
There is also a possibility of cancellations due to COVID cases on board. When a COVID rate of 0.3% or higher is reached, it will be decided on an individual basis if the ship can come in. Last-minute cancellations, problematic, says Klein.
The restaurants get extra food, they bring in extra staff, they bring in extra buses to give tours, they bring on extra tour guides to provide them, and they find out an hour before they're supposed to have passengers come up, they're not going to be here.
For tour operators, cancellations due to the weather are common.
COVID, well, who knows? We're just hoping that things would work out. We remain optimistic.
What the actual impact would be should many ships be cancelled, Hanlon said would have to be evaluated later this season. For now, 30 ships are scheduled to arrive right here, bringing about 40,000 passengers with them. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
The cabinet minister responsible for the online portal for driver's licenses and permits says a technical issue has brought down the site. Sarah Studley says the MyGovNL site hasn't been hit by a cyber attack and personal information held on that site has not been compromised. MyGovNL normally allows residents to go online for government services such as renewing car registration or getting an MCP card online. Residents can still phone motor vehicle registration and MCP offices for services. Studley says the problem is with the company the government uses to make online services available.
There was an unforeseen issue this week with the company who hosts the MyGovNL user experience interface, the top layer where people log in. And so that's just a technical issue on their end. It's completely unacceptable that it's been down this long. Our team is engaged with them very closely. We've put our best experts working with them to resolve the issue. We're doing everything we can to get it back up as soon as possible.
MyGovNL has been offline since at least Tuesday, and Studley said she can't say when it will be operating reliably again.
The province is completing another population survey of caribou in central and western Newfoundland.
Yeah, wildlife officials are counting the animals from the herds from Lapoille Bay to the west, the Trans-Canada to the north, and as far east as the Bay d'Espoir Highway. And tonight, Troy Turner explains how the count happens and why it's needed.
A helicopter hovers low over the caribou, herding them into a group or line. Carefully, wildlife officials will drop bright, temporary paint on a number of animals and fly away to the next grouping of the herd.
We work with skilled pilots who are able to herd these animals into a group, ideally into a line, and then they're able to fly low and slow over the top of these animals. And we drop a small amount of paint, red paint, on 1 in 4 animals that we see. Okay, so that's phase 1.
Phase 2 involves flying back over the same route and counting the number of painted to unpainted animals. After that, it's back to the office.
Taking our GPSs and our data sheets and producing a population estimate. Also from that, we can understand the distribution of the animals during winter, and how that might change over the course of the past few years, things like this.
The province has been conducting caribou population surveys for decades. In that time, the numbers seemed to peak about 25 years ago.
Mid-90s was our peak population size.
Yeah.
at about 95,000 animals. And when you have that many animals on a landscape, they tend to start degrading their habitat.
The mid-90s also saw an increase in predators such as the coyote and black bear. Over the past 2 years, however, the numbers have stabilized.
What we are seeing today are much healthier, robust, much more fit animals who are much more able to evade predation. And there's why you're seeing a stabilization in that curve. So you've already lost your older, sicker animals out of the herds, and you're left with these more robust animals that can evade predation much more easily.
The biggest challenge of the population, says Coward, is herd recruitment. This is when young caribou survive long enough to become part of the population. Troy Turner, CBC News, Deer Lake.
We've got some showers working its way across eastern Newfoundland. Going to be a wet night tonight. Tomorrow, unsettled as well. We'll have the full forecast coming up.
Weather Update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Early bird deadline is midnight tomorrow. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
You know, it's May, and this is the sort of month where our expectations start to rise along with the temperature.
Yeah.
How warm was it today?
Yeah, because the rest of Canada starts to get a lot nicer.
We see all their flowers and their nice greenery, and the cherry blossoms are out in Toronto, and like, and you've got like what, snow on the forecast for us?
A little bit of snow, nothing.
Oh, just a little bit.
Nothing too significant. No. Let's take a look at where we sat today. They were very much kind of where we should be sitting this time of the year. For most areas, 9 degrees in St. John's, 10 in Deer Lake today, and even Mary's Harbour reached 10 degrees this afternoon. But those temperatures have significantly dropped for most of the big land. Really, 6 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. That's what, 9 degrees less than what it was yesterday at this time. So certainly seeing some of that cooler air move in, and even cooler air will move in as we head through the night tonight. Taking a look at what's happening right now, the reason for that cool down is this cold front, and that will continue to sweep across the province. Already seeing some showers headed towards eastern Newfoundland, and a little bit of break in the cloud cover for some areas, hence that warm up for Mary's Harbour at 10 degrees today. So what's happening right now is those temperatures have dropped. We're down to 9 degrees in Mary's Harbour right now, 3 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and most areas are in the single digits across the island as well. 7 degrees is the current temperature in Corner Brook right now. And as we head through the night tonight, those temperatures are going to drop below zero for most areas on the west coast, northern peninsula, even through parts of central. Flirting with the 0 degree mark for Gander, and then the further east you go, the warmer the temperatures. About 4 degrees will be the overnight low tonight in St. John's. Winds, not a whole lot to talk about, 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. All the action will be up across the big land, particularly along coastal areas of the province, where we're going to see northwesterlies gusting between 40 to 60 kilometers per hour tonight, along with those flurries, and either flurries or showers. The story for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Lab City will go down to -11 tonight. Now, we do have those showers. They're going to get heavier as we head through the night tonight. Most of eastern Newfoundland is in those showers as we speak, as far as the satellite and radar goes, and the models are picking up on that very well. So that will move through. May see a bit of heavier showers after midnight tonight, particularly for the eastern half of the Avalon, but overall things should stay fairly clear tonight. We'll see the potential for some flurries develop as those temperatures drop, though, for the higher elevations really along the west coast and up across Labrador as well. Like I said, isn't going to accumulate to much, but that chance certainly still there, and most of central we'll either see showers or flurries tomorrow, and then that activity will work its way further east. So we're talking tomorrow night, Avalon, still looking at that potential for a few flurries in the evening hours, and will continue even into the overnight and Saturday morning as well. Things will generally improve, I should say, as we head through the day on Saturday, although stay just a little bit chilly as well. As far as rainfall projections go, most of the rain, like I said, should be for the southwestern portion, or rather southeastern portion of the Avalon. 10 to 20 millimeters is expected. Otherwise, we're looking at about a trace to 5 millimeters of rain in total. So tomorrow, temperatures will be a bit cooler, anywhere from 4 to 5 degrees. Those winds again in the northwest or out of the northwest between 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. A little bit of sunshine expected for the Burin Peninsula, but much more unsettled as you head towards central. Gander, you may see a few peaks of sun in the mix, but overall it will be an unsettled day with that chance of showers or flurries. And then as you head towards the west coast, again, those winds will be out of the northwest between 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. And then generally looking at unsettled conditions along the south coast as well. Likely a few peaks of sun, but overall cloudy through the day. Temperatures will be between 3 and 6 degrees into the afternoon. Now for the northern peninsula, this will likely fall all as flurries for you. The winds will be brisk as well through the day. We haven't really been talking a whole lot about the winds, but they will be out of the northwest, gusting between 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, and temperatures very much cooling down for you. Mary's Harbour down to 1 degree, even Cartwright below zero for the first time in a little bit. And then as we head towards northern Labrador, you may see a few peaks of sun through the day. The winds will eventually ease off for you as well, but still be out of the north. And then through central and western Labrador, we're looking at temperatures between 0 or just below, with the potential for flurries through the day. So This should be the last of the flurry activity, which is the good news. We have major warm-up coming as we head towards next week. Even Happy Valley Goose Bay showing temperatures nearing the 20-degree mark, and I'll have that forecast coming up.
It's really important to protect yourself from the flu as well. So, and all the things that we do for COVID will help with the flu.
COVID is easing here for now. Next, why the Chief Medical Officer of Health is bracing for 2 viruses this fall. The numbers are encouraging. The number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths because of COVID-19 have all been falling. But a lot of people in this province have now had COVID. Health officials say about 1/3 to half of the population has had it. So what changes if you have had it, and what do our summer and fall look like? Well, I met up with Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, for her insights. Well, Dr. Fitzgerald, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So the number of people testing positive for COVID has been down quite a lot. Is that because fewer people have COVID, or is that just because fewer people are getting tested?
So I think for the most part, it's because fewer people have COVID. We are certainly seeing, and all of our indicators right now are showing us that the rates of COVID cases, new COVID cases in the province is dropping. So we're seeing that not just in our actual testing numbers, but we're seeing it in people in the group that are over 60. So that's been consistent, right? Like that group, their testing requirements haven't changed. So we're seeing that is dropping. We're seeing the number of people who are admitted in hospital with a coincident diagnosis of COVID, that number is dropping. Staff people out because they have COVID, that number is dropping. And our wastewater is certainly indicating that our levels are reduced.
In past waves, when the numbers came down, it was because we locked down. Why are the numbers coming down now?
So I think, we have a certain level of immunity, number one, and we've been very fortunate here that people have, gotten vaccinated, and then a lot of people have gotten boosted as well. But then there's the natural infection that has happened, and certainly we know that, the amount of disease that was spreading in the community certainly was higher than what we were testing. So, 4 to 6 times higher. So we do certainly estimate that a significant proportion of the population has gotten natural infection as well, so that either if they didn't have any vaccinations, then that certainly helped protect them, but also boosted the protection that you can get from vaccinations as well. Giving the immune system another exposure is always boosts the immune response. So I think what we're seeing is that reduction because of immunity. But also, I think people are getting outside, and so there's less time being spent indoors, and that's making a difference as well.
Have you been lucky enough to avoid it so far?
So far, this as far as I know, unless I was one of those lucky asymptomatic people. But yeah, so far, now that I've said it, of course, you've jinxed me. But yeah, so far.
Because it seems at the beginning, the conversation was, it was quite rare if you had it. Now, the conversation, it almost seems to be flipped around, that it's like, oh, you haven't had it yet.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember exactly when, before Christmas sometime, that I said, there will come a point where most of us will have gotten this, and I think that's still true. We know that when you have a disease such as this, which is so infectious, causing mild disease, plus you have the immunity from vaccination, then we are going to see more rapid spread of it, and it's starting to behave a little bit more like our regular respiratory viruses that we normally see circulating in the winter.
So the fact that you've managed to avoid it, is that good luck or good management?
I don't know. I think it's just it's a factor of not being able to go very many places. I've been sort of not anywhere really outside of work and home for the most part.
So for the growing number of people who have recovered from COVID, does anything change for them about the protections they need to take? Can they take a little more risk because they have some of that immunity that they've acquired through an infection?
So I think, it's very tempting to do that, isn't it? For sure, right? And I totally get why people would want to do that, but I think we have to remember that COVID is still really new to us. We've only had it I know it feels like it's been here forever, but it really has only been here for a couple of years, and it's evolving still, and we are still responding to that. And one of the reasons why we can be a little less concerned about other coronaviruses, that cause the cold, or other respiratory viruses, is because we get exposed over and over again and we build up that immunity, and we haven't had that opportunity really to do that with COVID just yet. So, and then we think about COVID, and COVID is evolving, and there's new variants and new sublineages of Omicron that are coming out all the time. So we have to remember that that can change as well. So it still behooves us to really be careful and follow those same precautions that we've been taking, just to make sure, and flu is coming back, and we've had 2 years with really not much flu. So, and flu changes a lot from year to year. So what you had, the flu you were exposed to in 2018 may not be the flu you get exposed to now, and so we don't have that innate or natural immunity to flu that we would normally have from year to year, because we've had 2 years with essentially none. So, it's really important to protect yourself from the flu as well. So, and all the things that we did for COVID will help with the flu. And, so we certainly would want people to still be careful and make your risk assessments.
So with more people getting COVID, there's more chance for the virus to mutate. How worried are you that we might see a virus change into something where you don't get protection against severe disease from either a previous infection or from vaccination?
Yeah, and certainly what we're seeing with vaccination, because you get that T-cell immunity as time goes on, and with boosters, and that helps to protect against that severe disease that you may get, but it doesn't necessarily protect against transmission. So the concern really is that with new variants or sublineages, say, of Omicron, so, I don't know if people BA4 or BA5, the concern is that that may have some, like Omicron, may have some immune evasion, and so you can probably see some spread of that in the future. But whether or not the protection against severe disease is there, I guess, will still remain to be seen. So we're watching things closely, and everybody is watching things closely, including the Public Health Agency of Canada, the World Health Organization, and certainly will. As we have done throughout this, if we need to pivot, if we need to evolve, then we will.
When you look at the future, what are you thinking the next sort of period of time is going to be like with COVID?
All things holding as they are, I think we're seeing our cases drop now. I think we'll continue to see that over the next few weeks. And, hopefully we'll see a summer that has a bit of a lull. I do think that we're going to see increase activity in the fall, and we may see flu with that as well. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen with flu, but we may very well see a regular flu season for 2022-23, which usually starts sort of towards the end of the year, and then into January, February is our first wave usually of flu. So we may very well see that along with a wave of COVID. We always see an increase in respiratory illness and transmission in kids once kids go back to school in September. So we may very well see that with COVID this year. So we're looking out for all of that, watching things closely.
How much of a concern is it for you having both a surge of COVID and a surge of influenza and the strain that can put on the healthcare system?
Yeah, that is concerning, absolutely, and that's why we're watching it so closely, right? We want to make sure that we can get on top of it, and of course what we know is that the flu shot, for example, will certainly help protect against influenza, and so we would really be strongly encouraging people this year especially to get their flu vaccine. And then to be up to date with all of their COVID vaccines, whether that's whatever a primary series plus whatever boosters are recommended for you. So, and that primary series may vary depending if you're immune compromised or not. So, we certainly want to move, have people be really cognizant of getting their vaccinations this fall. I think that will be really helpful and probably one of the most important things we can do.
So now that there seems to be less COVID in the province, is COVID taking up less of your life?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, public health team is getting back to a little more, I think, normal work hours and, weekends free, so that's nice. So we're all trying to move forward, but we've got lots of work to do because there's been lots on hold for a couple of years. And so we're really now trying to move some of those public health priorities forward in the coming months.
Okay, well, Dr. Fitzgerald, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Peter and Dr. Fitzgerald giving you the local Newfoundland and Labrador picture. As for the planet, the World Health Organization released some staggering numbers on the global toll of the COVID pandemic. The WHO says nearly 15 million people have died from the virus itself and from the impact that it's had on healthcare systems. That's 13% higher than the normal number of deaths expected over a 2-year period. And it's more than double the official numbers reported to the WHO. Most of the deaths were in Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas. The head of Planned Parenthood NL says the options are abysmal for those seeking abortion care in this province. Just one clinic provides surgical abortions, and it's located here in St. John's. And Nikki Baldwin questions why that is. She spoke with the CBC's Daryl Roberts, and he started by asking what she makes of the United States potentially overturning its stance on legalized abortion.
Honestly, initially just horror that in 2022, people still can make laws that decide what you do with your health care.
But does that make you concerned at all for what could happen in Canada?
I mean, there's always a concern when things like this happen in countries that are so close to us. Our rights to abortion are enshrined in our human rights, which is quite wonderful. It's part of our healthcare. But there's always ways that people can chip away at that or limit access. And the more there is this stigma and the more people are pushing against it, the more limited access to abortion does get in Canada. Access to abortion in Newfoundland and Labrador is pitiful at best. We have one abortion clinic. They're amazing, wonderful people. They are in St. John's. They do travel once a month to Central and once a month to the West Coast. Outside of that, there is no abortion care in Newfoundland and Labrador, which means that Labrador, you have to fly into the island portion to get any abortion care. There is some good news on that side with abortion pills, but finding a doctor and a pharmacy that carries them is really difficult in rural Newfoundland. The main option is driving to St. John's, which is obviously outside of the realm of possibility for a lot of people. The other option is if your doctor, or you can find a doctor who's sympathetic, they can order you the new abortion pills that were approved here. They are covered by MCP. So your doctor prescribes them and you pick them up at the pharmacy, but they're free when you pick them up. The trouble is that a lot of pharmacies in rural Newfoundland don't carry them, so they have to wait for them to come in, or there is that the more people in your small town that know what you're doing, the more likelihood that everyone in your small town is going to know what you're doing.
And what is the finances looking for people who have to make that trip into St. John's? What are they looking at having to pay for?
Yeah, so they have to pay for the travel, which even if you're driving is now really expensive with gas prices. They also have to pay for accommodations here in St. John's. And then that all, as well as food and all that sort of thing. While the abortion portion is covered by MCP, the rest of it is not. There are some programs like Hope Air, and if you're with NLPDP, there is possibility of some coverage that way. And there is this amazing organization called Abortion Support Services Atlantic that can help basically crowd fundraise for you to be able to travel from your small community into a bigger community in Atlantic Canada, because obviously we're not the only province with this issue. We hear that people sometimes end up having babies that they didn't want, which we know doesn't end up well for anyone in that situation, the family or the child. Hitchhike even, we've had that recently. Even with COVID, we've had people trying to hitchhike to get abortions. So we do try to provide as much support as possible. There are some people across the island who are basically, if you can get connected with them, will help you travel to St. John's, and the Athena Center itself is really helpful for that. They know sympathetic doctors across the province, and they know who to reach out to from which community to get you where you need. So there are a lot of people trying to help, but it's definitely pretty abysmal for something that could be done in every hospital across the province.
Well, the work of the late Rita Joe continues to inspire people. The Mi'kmaq poet and songwriter's work spoke about residential schools, peace, as well as reconciliation.
Fitting given that this is Red Dress Day, or as it's officially known, the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls.
And one Nova Scotia school is working to bring the poet laureate's work to life through puppets. Colleen Jones now with that story.
The late Rita Joe, known as the poet laureate for the Mi'kmaq people. A Shubenacadie residential school survivor, Rita Joe, also an Order of Canada recipient and a hero to many. One of her famous poems, I Lost My Talk, inspired this National Arts Centre piece a few years ago. And it inspired songs. It's also inspiring these students at Island View High School.
The Salité, where the community gets together and supports each other.
That's Trevor Pierce. I'm at his drama class.
Check yourself out in the light.
Trevor, along with the school's art specialist, Melanie Kennedy, are working with the class and adapting Rita Joe's I Lost My Talk into a production. Melanie's also the playwright. She wrote the script.
Rita famously wrote the poem I Lost My Talk. I contacted Rita Joe's daughter to find out if it would be okay if we used her stuff, and she gave us permission.
Quiet on the set, please.
But now these students are bringing it to life through puppetry.
How it goes. The story is about a little girl that lost her talk, and the animals that represent or have become the symbols of the seven sacred teachings come to the little girl and give her their knowledge and wisdom, and through that she discovers herself.
I'm going to be on stage for majority of the play. So
They're fine-tuning the puppets as they prep for the first rehearsal. That means more hot glue, more paint. The voiceovers for the scripts have been done.
So we can just play the audio.
Sage.
Melanie and Trevor chose puppetry and blacklight theater to tell the story.
And passing our hands to the smoke.
I have Métis in my ancestry, but I am not Mi'kmaq, and so I was very conscious of the fact that when I went looking for a resource, there wasn't one to be found. We're talking about a culture that's primarily an oral culture, and so there's not a lot that's written down.
While the elementary students will hear Rita Joe's work, these high school students working on the project are learning the 7 sacred Indigenous teachings through the lens of Rita Joe's work.
This is a story that deserves to be told, and so I dug it out and finished it and consulted with people along the way. So it has been vetted and gratefully accepted feedback from lots of people in the Mi'kmaq community.
They have a few more rehearsals and a show that has many moving parts, but when they finish, they hope it's a small way to continue Rita Joe's legacy. Colleen Jones, CBC News, Eastern Passage.
Well, keeping beaches and shorelines clear of plastic and other trash seems like an endless challenge, but a seaside community in Nova Scotia has found a pretty practical way to make a big difference. CBC's Nicolas Seguin has that story.
On Nova Scotia's beaches, trash can be more common than seashells. Angela Riley spends most of her time picking it up. She collects plastics, ropes, and thousands of lobster bands.
If you go down to the Bay of Fundy or southwest Nova Scotia, Northumberland Strait as well, they're just inundated with them. When I say thousands or millions, I'm not over-exaggerating. It's crazy.
Riley says the problem is getting worse. Most of the bands are concentrated around lobster processing plants. So she decided to do something about it. Atlantic Chai-Can Seafood was one of the worst, until she gave them a call. The plant's solution? Screens on its drains and homemade socks on its discharge pipes.
We don't want to see bands and tags and everything else, as Nova Scotians, we want to be proud of our beaches, and that's one thing we have that's beautiful, and it'd be nice to keep it like that.
Commercial pipe socks can be expensive, but Weir says his design costs $20 per sock and 20 minutes to make. And they're working. In the last 2 weeks, they've caught this garbage that would have slipped into the ocean. Scientists with Dalhousie University's Marine Affairs program say plastic on the beach is something we should all be concerned about.
The rubber band itself could be ingested by marine fauna or seabirds, which would prevent ingestion of food, so the organisms could still die.
The Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture says provincial regulations require the beach around processing plants to be kept clean. But will they make pipe socks mandatory? The department's spokesperson would not answer that question. Mandatory or not, Atlantic Chai-Can Seafood hopes to inspire the rest of the industry to make changes.
Seeing all those lobsters there, it's a good reminder that this weekend is Mother's Day weekend.
It is.
And a lot of people look forward to, can I go for a nice outing outside with mom? But of course, there's always the weather.
Yes, there's always the weather.
So how is the weekend weather looking?
Yeah, we've been talking an awful lot about the fact that we're going to see a warm up because, we've seen a lot of chilly temperatures over the last little bit, and it does look like this weekend looks pretty lovely.
Okay,
it's nice.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
Definitely. Let's take a look at what's going to happen. So until we get there, though, we are looking at that chance of flurries, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, overnight Friday into Saturday morning. But as that pattern changes, the temperature should increase through the day, and whatever does fall should melt. But overall, a fairly unsettled start to the day, at least. By the time we get into the afternoon or evening, we should actually see the skies eventually clear out. Maybe not before sunset, but certainly will eventually clear out. Now, temperatures across the island should sit the coolest will be still along the west coast and northern peninsula, around 2-3 degrees through the day. Still seeing that onshore flow and the potential for a few flurries. But like I said, things should clear out. The warmest temperatures will be further east. So St. John's will sit around 7 degrees for a good chunk of the day. Showers in the morning and then sunshine as the day goes on. Up across the Big Land, you're looking at temperatures between 0 to +3. Ridge of high pressure is going to start to build in for you, so the weather is going to get much better as we head into Mother's Day. So as we see that ridge, it should eat away all that cloud cover as well across a good chunk of the island. We may see a few lingering clouds into the afternoon on Sunday, at least through the morning hours, and then eventually clearing out as we get into the afternoon and evening hours. But temperatures look lovely. So single digits, this is a bit below where we should be this time of year, but with the sunshine, lack of wind, Sunday actually looks pretty beautiful. We're looking at temperatures between 5 to 9 degrees through the day. Up across Labrador, similar temperatures between 8 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, anywhere from 4 to 7 for the rest of the Big Land. And again, you may see a few cloudy periods, but overall it will be a gorgeous Sunday to get out and enjoy. And then as far as the long range forecast, this is the start of a beautiful stretch of weather at this point. Still early, but at this point, this is what it's looking like. We're talking about temperatures reaching the teens by the time we get into Tuesday. So 8-9 degrees by Sunday, Monday, then Tuesday, 14 degrees. Overnight lows around 1 degree through the afternoon. We may see a bit of cloud cover, but overall, it really does look like a nice stretch of weather, and it certainly does as we head towards central Newfoundland, We're teens expected on Monday and flirting with a 20-degree mark as we get into Tuesday, which is pretty lovely with nothing but sunshine. Overnight low still flirting with 0 or just below. Now for western Newfoundland, looks like your temperature should be up a bit more than that overnight, but during the day again between 11 to 17 degrees. And lots of sunshine. So it's basically what we've all been waiting for, that's for sure. Don't get too excited about planting though, obviously still looking at the potential for frost. But as far as eastern Labrador goes, you're looking at the potential to reach 20 degrees and similar forecast for western Labrador. So certainly nice. Now this shot's pretty great too. Kayaking in Pinchgut Lake, hopefully I said that right. Dina shared that with us. If you have any that you would like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Oh, it looks so perfect.
The kayaking.
Well, just this slicing across waveless water with a
It
little bit
is
of ice
beautiful.
on the side.
Yeah, you're a big kayaker.
I love it. I mean, I think a bit of ice there, but that's no reason not to head out if you can.
That will probably be gone, I'd say, with those 20-degree temperatures next week. That will
Yes.
be lovely.
Beautiful. That's
Yeah.
very nice.
Although it'll be interesting to see, because I feel like sometimes the long-range forecast, it gets your hopes up, it makes you all excited, you make some plans, and then the closer it gets, it doesn't always pan out that way.
Yeah, they're all indications pointing at a nice warm-up. So maybe, we don't hit 20 degrees, but it'll certainly be within that, in that range for sure.
Okay, well, I will keep my optimism high then.
Please.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.